An AEW original is reportedly released from the company after failing to come to terms on a contract extension. Plus, we have an update on the low viewership and key demographic ratings for AEW Rampage's episode last Friday. All this and more in today's AEW news. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of AEW. So let's start off talking about a possible and seemingly confirmed departure from the company, that being a member of the Dark Order, an original member of the Dark Order as well. Stu Grayson looks to be gone from All Elite Wrestling. Now, Stu Grayson is no longer on the official AEW roster page, and word now is that he has left the company. Grayson was removed from the official AEW roster page on the AEW website yesterday at a time when several deals are coming up. While AEW has not confirmed his departure as of the recording right now, Dave Meltzer of F4W Online noted how word going around is that Grayson's contract expired and the two sides failed to come to terms on a new contract. Now, for what it's worth, other members of the Dark Order are still listed on the AEW roster page. This includes his tag team partner, Evil Uno, Alan Five Angels, Alex Reynolds, Colt Cabana, John Silver, Preston Vance, and Anna Jay. Now, of course, Grayson debuted with AEW at the inaugural Double or Nothing pay-per-view in May of 2019, arriving with Uno as the mystery men that led to the creation of the Dark Order in what was almost, I guess, a bit of an infamous arrival in which the crowd had no idea who they were, and it just was a very, 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 very flat debut. Now, Grayson last wrestled during last week's AEW Dark Elevation episode, as the Dark Order defeated Eli Osum, Anthony Bennett, Mike Law, Corey Menshaw, and Jaden Vallow and Brett Waters in 12-man tag team action. The week before that, the Dark Order won a 10-man tag team match on Elevation, defeating Tito Ortick, RC Dupree, Jake Owen, Bulk Nasty, and Luther. While the week before that, Grayson and Uno took a loss to Powerhouse Hobbs and FTW champion Ricky Starks on AEW Dark. Grayson's last Rampage appearance came on April 1st as he, Uno, and Fuego del Sol took a loss to the House of Black, while his last Dynamite appearance was the Casino Tag Team Royale on March 2nd. As of right now, Grayson hasn't actually commented on his AEW departure, but of course, once he does, we'll talk about it here on the channel. Certainly a surprising one. Obviously, look, he's an AEW original. He was at the first ever pay-per-view event, and I remember listening to a Talk is Jericho podcast interview he and Evil Uno did with Chris Jericho. This was a couple of months ago. It might have been at the beginning of whenever it was. And he was talking about how much he loved being in AEW, how happy he was being there, and how, much respect and how much admiration he had for Tony Khan, because they were ones that were really, really affected with the pandemic because, of course, they're Canadian, French-Canadian as well, and they were stuck. They were stuck in Canada, and for a period of time, they could not travel. And even when they were able to finally travel over to Dynamite tapings when they were taping them out of the Empty Dailies place, basically the quarantine, they would tape obviously every 2 weeks, and they would fly or drive to Jacksonville, get there, and be tested, get in the bubble, do the show, and then go back into Canada. But when they went back into Canada, they had to quarantine for 2 weeks. By the time their quarantine was over, they would then go back to Daly's place, and that would basically be the situation. So essentially, they really didn't see their families at all for like 2 years because they were just in and out of quarantine, going back and forth, doing the shows in Daly's place, which is a huge amount of credit to the Dark Order. Talk about dedication to the craft. Talk about dedication to still entertaining us whilst we weren't able to attend, watching at home. They deserve a huge amount of credit for that. And also just they were the pillars and the original members of the Dark Order. Obviously, Mr. Brody Lee came in and kind of evolved that faction. But to be honest, I was quite surprised. I thought, considering that he'd been there for such a long period of time, and the legendary sketches from the Dark Order on being the elite and all that kind of stuff, that he would be one to stick around. But we've spoken about this quite a few times here when we've been talking about AEW recently, to be honest, that there are so many people under contract, and this is going to happen. And I think it's almost naive. Maybe some AEW fans have almost got a bit of a naivety that if you sign all of these people, if you keep signing all of these people onto the roster, eventually people have to go. That's pro wrestling. People can bash WWE for it, and do I think WWE could do it a better way? Absolutely. Do I think they could handle their talent in a better way? Absolutely. But that is kind of the circle of the professional wrestling life. When you sign people, other people have to be released. People, when they say budget cuts, they don't like to hear it, but there is true. Everyone has a budget, a talent budget. And as I spoke about before, I think Cody Rhodes is a really, really, really good example of this. And he would be the same, Stu Grayson, signed contracts with AEW when they were just starting up. That was before they got really any of the big money from Warner Media. You have to remember, AEW, when they were first around, it was largely just Tony Khan and his family bankrolling that promotion, and with the hope that eventually they would become profitable because they would get a TV deal that paid them to produce television as opposed to just getting some ad revenue, which originally, that's what their contract was with Warner Media. Their original show, Dynamite on TNT, was you'll produce 2 hours of wrestling a week for a TV show. Production cost, everything that's on you. You make it at your cost. The money you get out of it, of course, are ticket sales, but also from a television point of view, we'll split the ad revenue 50-50. We'll give you the platform to broadcast it. We'll get half the ads. You get half the ads. That's it. And obviously, eventually, it was so much of a success and a ratings draw for TNT at the time that Warner Media said, I think we've got a bit of a hit on our hands here, guys. Okay, we're happy to pay you now. And they restructured that contract. They then gave him, what was it, a 2-year, 3-year deal with Warner Media, and it then expanded it. That's why you have Rampage and Battle of the Bouts and all that kind of stuff. But it was a deal whereby we're now willing to pay you. We will pay you, a certain amount of money to produce Dynamite, Rampage, and these specials every single week. And then, because of that budget that they were then given, because of those extra funds that they were given, Tony Khan was then able to go out and sign people like CM Punk, like Bryan Danielson, like whoever, like Adam Cole for bigger contracts and say, yep, we can give you these bigger contracts. And I'm sure those people that signed with AEW in 2019 were thinking, okay, my contract's coming up in... They all basically signed 3-year deals. When my contract's coming up in 2022, I know the money has gone up in this company, so I'm going to ask for more money. And Tony Khan, I think in fairness, in several situations, arguably the biggest being the Cody Rhodes situation, just said, look, we've still got a budget and we still I can't give everyone what they want. And pay people through the pandemic, didn't do what WWE did in that the pandemic hit and just released a load of people that were worried about their jobs and their job security anyway. Tony Khan didn't do that, but now it's got to the point where there are just so many people under contract. They're just, and despite having Dark and Dark Elevation and Rampage and Dynamite, it's just a struggle to get anyone on these shows anyway. So I'm sure Stu Grayson will do fine. Will Evil Uno go with him? I don't know. It depends on what he's looking for. Again, Stu Grayson failed to come to terms. Maybe Evil Uno did. Maybe Evil Uno's fine with it. He goes, yep, I'm happy to stay on the same terms. I'm happy to be here. So we don't really know. I think Stu Grayson will be fine. They, prior to going to AEW, again, this is why it's always fascinating to listen to the Talk is Jericho podcast. They were sort of saying that AEW was kind of their last hope because they were having issues getting into the United States anyway, all that kind of stuff, and because about traveling across the borders and all that kind of thing. So they were working mainly Canadian indie shows and all that kind of stuff. I don't think they'll have that issue now. So I'm sure he'll be fine. The world is opening up or has opened up again, so there'll be plenty of independent shows for him to work for and plenty of other promotions for him to work for, right? Whether it's MLW, whether it's NWA, whether it's New Japan, whether it's Impact Wrestling, there are certainly options out there. So whilst it was a surprising one because he's one of the original members, and I wouldn't say super, super high profile, but the Dark Order has been part of some big moments throughout AEW history. It certainly is surprising, but it's not going to be the last. There's going to be several of these over the course of certainly the next month or so. People aren't going to come to terms because AEW has to trim that fat. They've got a very bloated roster, and people aren't going to come to terms, and people are going to want to leave as well because they're not getting TV time. So again, whilst it's somewhat of a surprise when you take a step back, I suppose it's not totally surprising. Let's talk about Rampage briefly. Of course, Rampage was on TNT as always on Friday, and Friday's taped edition of AEW Rampage drew an average of 4,600 for 464,000. I'll get there in the end. 464,000 viewers on TNT according to Nielsen via Showbuzz Daily. Now this is down 10.42% from the previous week's live episode, which of course drew 518,000 viewers. Rampage drew a 0.14 rating in the 18 to 49 key demographic. This is down 26.31% from the previous week's episode 2. Friday's Rampage ranked number 25 on the cable top 150, which is down from the previous week's number 14 ranking. It also ranks number 70 in viewership for the night on cable, which again is also down from the prior week's 67 ranking. Friday's Rampage drew the lowest key demo rating in the history of the show for the normal time slot, tied with the March 25 episode, which again is not great, really not great. Of course, the NBA playoffs dominated cable. The playoff games between the Grizzlies and the Timberwolves on ESPN topped the night for the cable top 150. What more needs to be said, to be honest, when it comes to Rampage, right? And it wasn't a bad show, right? It had Samoa Joe versus Trent Beretta in the main event. You had Darby Allin versus Swerve Strickland. As I said before, if it's going to remain taped, which it looks like it will, they've got to put big matches on that show, honestly. No disrespect to Joe or Trent or whatever, but how many people, when an NBA game on, is really going to go, oh, I've got to tune in to watch Samoa Joe versus Trent Beretta for the Ring of Honor television title? Not many. You know, only hardcore wrestling fans, let's be honest. They need to put big matches, big stars on that show to try and boost those numbers up. They need to be live. And maybe they might move there in the future. And they need to go to a different time slot. There's a lot of, Rampage is the B show. It's very clear to see. And even the way it's booked and presented, it's the B show. Several times, I've said this recently, that if you miss an episode of AEW Rampage, you really don't miss that much. You don't. And AEW needs to change that. AEW needs to be like, if you miss an episode of Rampage, you're going to miss out, and you might struggle to keep up with everything. Because at the moment, it just doesn't feel important, and that's the problem with it. So the ratings will continue to slide, honestly. Obviously, the competition is pretty fierce, but the ratings will continue to slide otherwise. They have to change something with that show, and I'm sure Tony Khan's probably trying to figure that one out. But anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on today's AEW news stories in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestling News 365, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.